Hello everyone, thanks for stopping by. Today, we'll be covering the high-grade Universal Sentry Asshimar. It's a kit that I've been wanting for a while and was just recently reprinted, something that was welcomed by pretty much everyone. My copy is very recent, being reprinted in May of this year. It's a unique design and one of my favorites. This kit is a 2005 release and you can honestly tell. The plastic is weirdly glossy in some parts. If this kit used ABS plastic for them, I wouldn't be surprised. The hands are a 3-part construction, but not in the usual way. The thumbs are molded as part of the hand itself, and you sort of slide it into place with the palm. The instructions could be a little clearer since it's pretty easy to mix up pieces, especially the ones that allow for transformation, but I think the biggest indicator of the kit's age is that the polycaps are labeled with letters instead of numbers, which is a real throwback. That being said, for its age, the Asshimar is pretty impressive. Although some of the larger pieces are in 2 halves, the kit uses slide molds on areas where a 2-part construction would be a bit awkward, like the upper leg vents and the feet. Not only is this a transformable high grade, it transforms without any part swapping. I haven't built many transforming kits, but those I have need to swap parts, and those are more recent ones. So I imagine when this kit debuted, it was a pretty big deal. But how does this kit transform? Let's take a look at that. The transformation is pretty simple, but it does take some getting used to. I think the areas that cause the most confusion are the way the chest pulls out and the way the legs slide into each other. For the chest parts, they simply pull out straight. They have a weird look, and you might want to pull them from left to right, but the parts make it seem more complicated than it actually is. The legs are a little hard to explain, but the inner frame bit is made up of 2 parts. You don't simply push them in, but you rotate them, if that makes sense. The instructions do also show you the transformation process. Before painting, I wanted to add a Monoeye since there isn't one molded. Having a raised Monoeye adds some dimensionality and makes painting easier. My method isn't the most refined, but it's really simple, and you don't need anything other than some plastic cement. As you see, the Monoeye is just a piece of runner that I glued to the kit part and cut down to the right height. The kit does come with a clear piece that goes over the Monoeye, so I use that to make sure it's short enough to fit underneath. And here's how it looks. There are better options out there like LEDs, but I'm mainly keeping this in donut mode so it won't matter too much, and the Monoeye looks so much better than a sticker. We're starting off painting, and here's an attempt at showing the consistency I like my paint at. Hopefully you get a better judge of that by watching how my paint goes on. I get asked a lot about how much thinner I add to my paint, and I don't have an exact answer because I work off of what I feel is right. When you paint a kit, you're the one doing the work, so trust your instincts. An additional note though, whenever you see me take my brush off the model, I'll dip it in water before loading more paint on it. This just makes sure my paint isn't too thick. Before painting, I primed with Mr. Surfacer 1000, then sprayed a light coat of Tamiya-like gunmetal. The gunmetal is important because the kit transforms, and the metallic color will remain in the recessed areas that I just can't reach with a paintbrush. Brown may seem like a weird color to use, but since I'll mainly keep this kit in donut mode, I want a neutral color that won't stand out. I wanted a very stylistic, colorful paint scheme on the donut, and brown works great because it'll match with a lot of colors, which is especially helpful since I'm pretty much winging the color scheme. That's right, I don't know what colors I'll be using next, or rather, more accurately to say, I had a general idea for the color scheme, but haven't narrowed the specific shades down. I do decide to use a really dark gray for some of the accents on the legs. This is something I took from the Noble Gundam build. Dark brown and dark gray go really well together. It's a color combination that seems very high-end to me, if that makes sense. I can sort of picture some designer brand using these colors for a winter fashion collection. I also think that brown and gray would work great as an overall color scheme for a build, with just a pop of red or orange to spice things up and just even out the coolness. I really like this color pairing and I'll probably be using it more in the future. I decided to go really stylistic with the remaining colors and I'll be going with purple and orange. I'll walk you through with what I was going with for the purple mixture. I wanted a really dark purple on the bluer side to go with the orange, so I started off with an equal mixture of purple and blue. Then I wanted to darken it a little. I don't like using black to darken paint, so instead, I'm using the same dark brown I used for the legs. I think the brown really improved the mixture, even though I used so little of it compared to the other colors. It's not the kind of difference you can really put your finger on either, unless you're like me and actually mix the paint yourself. So one thing I noticed while reviewing this footage is that some of the painting is out of shot for these zoomed in parts. The camera isn't necessarily where my eyes are, which I apologize for. I try to have at least 30 seconds of real-time zoomed in footage, but there are certain bits where I needed to have the parts as close to me as possible, so I cut a lot of the footage out, but for the purple, there are at least 4 coats. Paint kept scratching off, and while this isn't a problem for me since I do some physical chipping later on, I do like some continuity in these videos, if that makes sense, so I try to have as clean and as smooth of a paint surface as possible until I actually get to those portions of the build where I am weathering the paint coat. I'm painting the orange. This mixture isn't anything too crazy, I just wanted an orange which was on the yellower side to go with the purple. And this is the point of the build where I wanted to give up, because orange is one of the hardest colors to brush paint, especially on a kit with curved surfaces like the Asshimar. This paint dried terribly. It pulled in these large blobs and was really discouraging. I didn't show it on camera, but after the initial coats dried, I sanded them down with a 10,000 grit sanding sponge. I then repainted the orange because I didn't like how it turned out. And the mixing ratio I include in the on-screen text reflects this. My first orange was way too yellow and gave me Lakers basketball energy, which wasn't the vision I had in mind. But this brings up a point. Things may change on a project. Not all of my ideas are the greatest, so it's important to be flexible. I'm just glad that I only had to change the shade of orange instead of stripping off the paint and doing another color, because if I had to strip the paint, there's a good chance that I would just scrap this entire thing. Or maybe just buy another Asshimar to repaint for a video. I'm then mixing up a darker orange to use on the inner portion of the donut as well as the inner part of the head. Just like the lighter orange, this one was difficult to paint as well and would prove to be even more of a headache if I was a clean builder. I do like how this color looks, and after 3 or 4 coats, I found the result acceptable enough. I then go and paint some of the mechanical surfaces dark gray. This wasn't something I was planning to do at first, but as I was looking at the kit, I felt that this was a necessary decision. And this is just the next bit of recurring theme where I'm second guessing myself and all of my decisions so far. I haven't painted anything really stylistic in a while, so I feel my lack of confidence is a little justified. I then go ahead and paint the inner parts of those thrusters and verniers red. I don't always do this, but I think it goes well with the 2 oranges in bringing warm colors all across the mobile suit. I'm painting some diamond shapes, an idea I had from the start. These are actually supposed to be stars in line with the space donut theme, and my phone was weird and kept closing out the camera while filming this, so I don't have a lot of footage. Sorry about that. But this was another point of the build where I was second guessing myself to the point where I thought about really scrapping the project. But I am going ahead with this and hope that things turn out in the end because I didn't like how these looked as I was painting them on. One thing I do is that I keep some stars with only one coat of paint while others I give 2 or 3 to make those seem newer and add a little story to this build, if it even translates. Shortly after painting the stars, I go ahead and do some physical chipping with metal tweezers since I actually found them. I am going pretty heavy since I want this space donut to look pretty well traveled, and it just improves the look overall in my opinion. Physical chipping also allows me to get out of any trouble with the paint dried uneven since I can just chip those bits away, and also make any areas of pooled paint a little less obvious. This is just a pin wash, it's nothing too crazy. I use a fine brush to paint in all of the panel lines and other details. I'm not being too careful in this step because I want the Asshimar to be weathered and seem like it's had a bit of a life. A pin wash is a technique that does a lot of heavy lifting. It emphasizes details and makes a model seem lifelike by creating false shadows. That being said, I did feel weird using it on the orange since the contrast between the orange and the black was pretty heavy. I'm doing some speckling all over the model, and if you're wondering why this is in donut mode instead of mobile suit mode, it's because I found that I couldn't take out the hands, so I'll have to keep it in donut mode forever. I'm starting off with a brown wash for speckling, but what I end up doing is streaking the majority of it downwards to create some very fine streak effects and building up a bit of a patina. I do give this a few passes and apply this several times. This step of the build is really where I start to like how it looks. At this point, I was finishing the build just to finish it. It was pretty crazy how a simple technique like speckling changed all the second guessing I had previously done. I do want to translate speckling to the darker areas where the brown didn't show up, so I use a black wash for that. I do streak some of it out, but horizontally, if we look at the legs how they should be in donut mode, that does give a bit of a contradiction as we have vertical streaks on the donut part and horizontal streaks on the legs, but this is a personal preference thing and I like how they look. I then gave the Asshimar a flat coat, but there was one thing I needed to do, which was paint the beam rifle. I painted in a grayish green mixture and then I just repeat the same weathering process, but in a slightly condensed version as there are no clear coats in between the different weathering steps. As this footage plays out, I want to share my thoughts on the build because this was a rocky one. I said it before, but I thought about scrapping this entire project. I had an idea in my mind, and along the way, I was second guessing it. But by trusting the process and my instincts, I have a finished product I'm satisfied with. It's not perfect, and I probably could have encapsulated the space donut idea better if I planned it out, but when I look at the finished kit, I actually like it. So if there's anything to take away from this video besides the usual look into my weathering process, it is to trust your instincts and see how things work out. You may not always think your paint job is perfect, but being able to try potentially risky ideas and sticking with these ideas is a mentality that's more valuable than the smoothest paint coat, at least for me. And as you can see, here's the finished Asshimar. The photos were a bit lacking since I can't fully transform it, but I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next video, whenever that is.